Yippee-Ki-Yay, mother.
Welcome to the party, pal.
Hey, welcome to Yippee-Ki-Yay Mother Podcast. What's going on, everybody?
Hey.
Hello.
How's it going, Ralph?
It's going great. You guys have a good week?
Oh, yeah.
Too bad.
Ralph, we got seem to have a lot of space in this episode.
Yeah, Sean and Debbie couldn't make it tonight.
Oh, Auntie and Auntie? Oh, sorry.
Well, that's another show, another time. Yeah, so it's just the four of us.
Well, before everybody tunes
could be a
John,
gang. I'm thinking it might be a gang.
Let's fight,
so.
but first, let's dance.
No. But first, let's subscribe.
Yes.
And
You know,
hit the
good call.
notification
Because
button.
normally what we do is we wait till the end.
Right,
But
don't.
the data shows you're not sticking around till
Right.
the end. So please,
Please, we're begging.
subscribe.
We're begging.
hit
All
the
right.
notification button.
So what we're going to
Slam.
do is we're going to talk. This is a remake. John picked this remake. It's West
This
Side
is when
Story.
I'm telling them to hit the like button, and you're talking over me.
You know, just get through it.
Smash it. Okay.
Then we'll do a round of. Then we'll spin for the next film next week, and then we'll do a round of what you watch. But before that, John wants to talk about West Side Story 2022. When did this
21.
come out? 21.
Yeah, 2021. This came out directed by Steven Spielberg. So I have to give you a little context around this choice of mine. So my background is musical theater. I have been doing musical theater since I was in the 5th grade. And one summer class, I played Riff in West Side Story. I adore the original West Side Story. I adore it. I think it's a great movie. Choreography by Jerome Robbins, directed by Robert Wise. That opening shot where they see that, you see the cityscape of New York, and it was very different type of musical that they shot some of it in there. So I was not. I believe there are certain films that should not be remade. Jaws is one of them. Probably The Godfather. I don't think there was any reason to remake this movie, so I had no desire to see this version of it. But when we talked about doing remakes, I said, you know what? I'm going to give it a shot because I'll end up watching both the films. And I will I will say this about the remake. I didn't dislike it nearly as much as I thought I would. There were things about it I did like. I like the fact that a lot of the dance numbers were shot like in a real place, as opposed to some of the stuff that was shot in the original West Side Story that you could tell was a set. The opening wasn't. That was really done in New York City. And I thought the cast was okay. You know what's funny? Like the girl who played Maria, I don't know her name, but
Rachel Zegler.
She seemed awfully young to me. And maybe because I'm comparing her to Natalie Wood, that's probably why. But I'm going to take just there was a lot of politics in this movie when it was being made. I'm even going to put that aside for my talk about this movie
For the time being.
Well, I mean, listen, I don't agree with the politics, but that's just because of my point of view. I'm looking at it strictly as the movie compared to the original one. And there were things in it I liked. They switched the order of the songs, which were really the way they were in the play. So the 61 version changed the order. And I actually think the 61's version order of songs was better. Like Cool, I think is a great song after the Rumble. And I think that was a far better scene than Cool in this movie. And also, I Feel Pretty is much earlier in the 61 version. And to have it after the Rumble, where everyone's get killed, it didn't work for me. I think it works much better earlier. Now, there might be a reason because you're showing, the absolute worst thing and the absolute best thing. I like the fact that Rita Moreno wasn't just a throwaway cameo, that she had an active role in the movie. The cast didn't impress me. The kid playing Riff, he had this high voice that, and my problem is I'm comparing him to Russ Tamblyn, who I really liked as Riff in the original.
And to yourself.
What was that?
And to yourself.
Yeah. Well, I can't do any of the stuff that Russ Tamblyn did. I thought Jerome Robbins' choreography is much better than the choreography in this film. It just is. That's my opinion. I thought some of the core, like the America scene, I still prefer the original version. But the way they did it in this movie by bringing it out to the street and there was much more people involved, I did like that. But so I guess my and I know a lot of people really like this film, and my problem is I didn't go into it completely unbiased because of my love of the original film. I just love that film. I think it's wonderful, even with all the problems, that in looking through eyes of today's eyes, you can look back and say, well, they shouldn't have done this thing. But back then, look, 10 years ago, no one was saying anything like this. It was just a brilliant film that won all the Academy Awards and everybody absolutely loves. Now, in hindsight, we can go back and say, well, they shouldn't have done this, they shouldn't have done this. Whatever. I don't even care about that. I'm just looking at them side by side, and I much prefer the original. This one was a little more less theatrical, more grounded, and maybe some people like that. But with like my theater background, I don't need grounded for this type of thing. I just thought I just prefer the original. And I know I'm rambling, but that's how I feel about it. But I will say I thought I was really not going to like it at all. And I there were things about it that I did like, but also I just watched the original too, and I just and no one does any singing in the original other than Rita Moreno, who does a little bit of her own singing, but no one else does their own singing. In this movie, everybody does their own singing,
and some of it was done on the set.
Well, Tony wanted to do it live at certain numbers, which I respect. That's a theatrical background, and he was okay. He was. Richard Beamer isn't great as Tony, and this guy was okay as Tony. Now you read about him and you read about some of the issues he's having, but again, that's a side conversation. He was okay. I mean, some of the cast kind of stood out a little bit. I thought the guy playing Bernardo was pretty good, and Rita Moreno I really liked. But like even the Officer Krupke number, it just didn't work for me compared to the original. It's just the original worked so much better for me. And again, I admit to you that I'm biased about the original film. So maybe I'm looking at it through those lens. But, that movie exists, so that's what I'm comparing it to. So that's how I feel about it. I don't think I think in 50 years they're not going to be talking about Spielberg's West Side Story. They're still going to be talking about Robert Wise's West Side Story. That's what I think. And that's it. Zooby-Doo.
Come on, Chris.
Okay, so I've made fun of this version of West Side Story without ever having seen it quite a bit. And the truth is, I really enjoyed it. I found myself enjoying it a lot more than I expected to. I had seen the original 61 version many years ago. Believe it or not, the university I went to, Salisbury State at the time, university, actually did West Side Story as one of their big productions. Funny little caveat there. I'm going to throw this out to an old seagull, classmate of mine, actually. The young woman who played Maria in the Salisbury version was named Jennifer Wills. She actually went on to play Christine in Phantom of the Opera on Broadway for 9 years.
Wow.
Yeah, so she's got the chops. She was really terrific. It's one of those things when you're watching one of those things and you're like, wow, that person's really good, and nobody else can really keep up. Anyway, but yeah, no, I found that I really kind of enjoyed this movie a lot more than I expected to. I mean, obviously Spielberg's a great filmmaker, so he's going to do a lot with it. I went back and I did not rewatch the entirety of the original, but I did go back and I watched a number of the different musical scenes. Like, for example, the America scene, and the Wise version, and I don't know if he did this specifically. Well, there were a few things that were done, like you said, in New York. It almost felt like he tried to recreate the stage musical for the screen. Like, especially like in the America sequence, it is obviously just a cardboard cityscape, and on top of, there's even overhead shots where they're looking down, and it doesn't look like a rooftop, while the America version and the Spielberg, or the America song in the Spielberg version, was really kind of wide ranging and engrossing, and very just colorful and full of life. And there's tons of movement and tons of people. So I really enjoyed that. I think I actually liked the Maria in the new version better than Natalie Wood as Maria. like I went back and I rewatched like the I Feel Pretty number, and there is, like you said, there's a part of it's like in the back of your head. It's why Audrey Hepburn didn't win Best
Right.
Actress for My Fair Lady, because everybody knew that even though she herself had actually trained very hard and became a much better singer, that they ended up using somebody else
Yeah.
as the actual, doing the songs. So there's maybe that's in the back of my head too, where you're like, okay. But no, this new version I thought I thought it was perfectly good. It did feel, it had a certain surreality to it, because obviously a lot of the backgrounds were kind of heightened or modified, whether it was through computer graphics or whatever. But even when you look back and you even look at the Wise version, like the scene where Tony is singing Maria, right? It's almost surrealistic,
Right.
because it's obviously using like rear projection or something as he's walking through, and it kind of switches from one to the other. But when it comes to a remake, I have to admit, like, I don't have any great love of West Side Story. It's a perfectly good musical and it's enjoyable and everything. But I do like, the fact that it use kind of, being a guy who knows a little bit about Shakespeare, I always find myself watching these movies, whether it's the Indian version of Hamlet, Hey Dear, that we saw a few months back. I always find myself like clicking in the bits and the pieces and saying, okay, this is this guy, this is that guy, and this is, Benvolio or Mercutio or whatever. And it is kind of interesting in that regard. I still always am like, why isn't Maria dead at the end somehow or another? Just because, like, I mean, maybe that would have made it too dark, but it would have closer to
would have been real dark.
Yeah. I mean, I was like, but she's Catholic. She can't kill herself. That's not going to happen. But anyway, long story short, I did like the way that they didn't feel the need to like be totally slavish to Romeo and Juliet and have that difference. And that's in all the versions. I think that's pretty standard. But yeah, no, I mean, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot better than I expected. I had a lot more fun with it than I expected to. And there are just some terrific songs. And I will say this, that Officer Krupke sequence, that is one that I could have just completely done without. I don't really remember it from the Robert Wise version, but in this one, I just was like, it felt thrown in there. Like, hey, we got to kind of have a goofy comic sequence. I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
And that Officer Krupke was the guy who played Shrek on Broadway.
Really?
That guy's done a lot.
Yeah.
That guy is one of those dudes where, like, when you see his filmography.
Yeah, he's in Spotlight. He plays one of the reporters in Spotlight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The guy who has the house near his house where he freaks out about the kids. Yeah.
He's great, and actually really
isn't he in A Serious Man too? Is he's done some Coen Brothers films, I think, or one.
He's been in a lot of stuff. Like he had a small but important role in Molly's Game, if you saw that movie, which was
a good film. Yeah,
good film.
All right, Drew. Before I start talking, I want to hear your thoughts.
Well, I first saw West Side Story in the West End. I was 10 years old, and my family went to London, and we saw 4 shows. We saw Starlight Express, Pajama Game, Little Shop of Horrors, and West Side Story.
Wow, what a
those
contrast.
it was a good week.
Yeah.
And those last 2 I remembered more. And I certainly enjoyed all of the shows except Starlight Express, because after you get past the fact that it's roller skating, it's not really about anything. It's not good. It's like Cats, but it's on roller skates. You're like, wow, that looks neat. Now what is the point? But I also, Romeo and Juliet is one of those stories that's been told over and over and over, and they should keep telling it. I'm sure there's some Indian versions of that story that we should watch at some point.
And Korean and
Korean and everything.
Yeah, right.
And I think Shakespeare in Love gets a bad rap because it was seen as it stole the Oscar from Saving Private Ryan or something. But that is, I think, as a good a version as any of them. It captures the tragedy of these young lovers. And the kids in the Spielberg one, they just seem so young, and I think that works for the story because it's so much more dangerous for these little kids. I mean, in the original Romeo and Juliet, they're like 14 or something, right. So they aren't giving me that energy in this. But I mean, I don't draw the line as hard as you do, John, that like certain movies shouldn't be remade, but it's definitely one of those movies like, why are we remaking it? But it's been 60 years. I didn't really even think about it. It's Steven Spielberg's first musical.
Yeah.
And this is a guy who's made a ton of different kinds of movies in his career over the decades, and he'd never made a musical. So it's interesting. Maybe he's produced some, I'm not sure. I love Leonard Bernstein. And I'm really looking forward to the Bradley Cooper movie that Bradley Cooper is directing, where he plays Bernstein, called Maestro. And I'm curious to see all these. I mean, I don't know if it's one of those biopics that's like the I Love Lucy one by Aaron Sorkin that was sort of a snapshot of a time, or if it's really a survey of his life. But I'm kind of curious to see how like the things that he created, they've got that last forever kind of impact. And, that's the West Side Story, the original one, is one of those. And I think that the Spielberg version is an excellent version of the story. If it didn't exist, I wouldn't miss it. But since it was done, it was really, really well done, and it feels like a Spielberg movie in the fact that it's got that big scale. And it never bothered me that West Side Story was, obviously a lot of it shot on a studio and in a set and everything. I never really thought about the singing part, but the fact that everybody is singing.
Right.
In the new one is I think that's wonderful. Never mind that they wanted to sing it on set and stuff. That's really cool. And I'm not a huge fan of Ansel Elgort. I don't dislike him. He's been fine in stuff I've seen, that like Baby Driver and stuff like that. But he
oh, was that the kid in Baby Driver?
Yeah, that's the lead. That's Baby. Yeah, and I didn't know he could sing. And then he starts singing, and you're like, okay, he can sing, because the Rachel Zegler, who plays Maria, and what's her name, DeBose, who plays Anita is, unbelievable, like really unbelievable. And like you said, Burrito Moreno is way more than just a cameo,
right?
And you think about her story as a person, and 60 years later to step back into West Side Story, and I can only imagine what it's like when you watch her walk onto that set after 60 years. Like it was a movie that I thought the remake was good. If you're gonna do it right. I think they did it right. They could have done a lot of things with it that were different that they didn't do. It's still a period piece set in the same era. It's got the same framework, the same characters. And again, it was like originally, like you said, it's loosely Romeo and Juliet. But like Chris said, you can see that's Tybalt, that's Benvolio, it's Mercutio. I guess Benvolio and Mercutio are kind of the same in this one, but you can see all that, and it all just works. And it really works in the first one, and it really works in this one. So I think it was fun to revisit the old one, because I haven't seen that in many, many, many years. And it was interesting to see the way that they did casting, as you had actual Latino people playing Latino characters, which wasn't really done. Like I didn't remember that much about West Side Story. I didn't think I'd sit there and say, oh my God, Natalie Wood wore brownface and I forgot, or something like that. But it feels more authentic to have Puerto Ricans playing Puerto Ricans, when the whole story is about the differences between these people and how they matter as much as you let them matter, and that can be very ugly and very violent. And I think both of the movies delivered that story. So if 60 years after you make one, you make it again, and you have the level of talent involved, and I find it emotionally, it's as effective, even with its changes, and like you said, reordering the songs and stuff. I liked it. I liked both of them. Again, if you had never done it, I wouldn't have said, why haven't they remade that already? But I'm glad that it was remade, and I'm glad that Spielberg did it. And I love his movies, not all of his movies, but I don't know. I kind of want to see him make another musical, because he can do the action movies so well, and this dance choreography is motion on screen like that. So I feel like, what would he do if he did something else, and something original maybe? So obviously, like Indiana Jones dancing in space or something.
Well, to make a movie 60 years later, you have to put Latino actors in it. You can't put blackface and dress it. You just can't. But that shouldn't have been an issue. It is because of the political, the world that we live in now. Then you add the Me Too movement with the main actor there, Elgort. He had some issues there. But I mean, what John isn't talking about is when West Side Story came out in 60, when did that come out?
61, I think.
By the time I was born in 61. So I'm in second grade when they're playing West Side Story on television. And I can remember going into school the next day once it was on and talking about how Tony got killed and what that did to Maria. Now, I don't know if they were making a Shakespeare comparison to us as second graders, but we had to talk about what that meant, that this guy died, and she, it was a big deal in our life. And on top of that,
second grade, you were talking about
second grade, and top of that, John didn't mention we would do Officer Krupke to our parents all the time, the three brothers, and we would always do that, and we would to the newspaper, the whole thing. We would do that whole thing. So West Side Story was a big part of our childhood.
That's funny.
So to have a remake and to think about Jaws directed by Steven Spielberg, and I never want to see a remake of Jaws, but if someone makes it, I'll go see it. But to have Spielberg do this remake, I think he's 10 years older than me. I think we're 10 years apart. I can see why he would want to do this, because it probably was a huge influence in his life as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw the weekend it came out in the movie theater. Maria and I went. Maria, my wife, and I didn't like it at the theater. I actually walked away going, there was no need for that. I didn't need to see that. I loved it. I loved the technique. I loved that shot he does right before the rumble where he opens the doors up.
You see the shadows?
In the salt, in the shadows. Yeah. It's like, okay, that's what Spielberg should do, right? Amazing. But I was like, there's no reason. I was like, okay, And as an adult looking at the love story, you kind of go, oh my God, especially this one. This one felt less, I guess because I was in love with Natalie Wood as a kid. Natalie Wood was a beautiful young person. In my age, she was just like, you're looking at this person, it's unbelievable. In this one, it felt a little, mainly maybe because of the Me Too, but creepy. He's super tall. She's this little, and they fall in love just by looking across. Like as an adult, you go
aggressive with him.
Yeah, I mean,
she kissed him.
Yeah, but it didn't flow for me. It didn't work. But
I mean, that is part of Romeo and Juliet. I mean,
I understand. And we bought it. I bought it in the 61. I bought it in the 61 version too.
And that's I think, that's young love. That's sort of the image of it, the intensity of it. That's what we all learned from the Twilight movies, I think, is the intensity of that kind of affection. Maybe Robert Wise will come back and do a musical version of Jaws, but I'd rather he do a musical version of Twilight, I think.
Twilight and West Side Story.
I want to say this. The idea that the non-subtitle and having people just speak their language, but if you saw the film, you know that they just stuck somebody in there. Corey Stoltz, what's his name? The guy playing the detective.
Yeah, Corey Stoltz. The guy talked like this the whole time.
Hey, don't
so realistic.
Talk English in here. What'd she just say? They repeat everything, so you're getting it all anyway. And it was grounded. This film was grounded. Bernardo was menacing in this one, as was Riff. Riff. I know you didn't like Riff, but Riff was
he was terrible.
No, Russ Tamblyn to me is Riff. Right. And that, okay. And this also made me, I talked about this last week, but that Saturday Night Live skit where the two gangs are getting together and they're wondering why you guys, they do that lift, the leg lift and the hand lift.
Yeah.
And they're like, why are you singing before we're going to rumble? It's like, we should link that in a thing because it's great. The other thing I want to say is because I saw this film, I also found a West Side Story tribute album. And we'll link that in the thing too. And this is some famous producer, performer, whatever, put together a tribute show. Little Richard sings "I Feel Pretty," and it's unbelievable. Brian Seltzer does the Jets thing at the beginning.
When you're Jet?
The Seltzer and this album is amazing.
You mean Brian Setzer?
Setzer, whatever his name.
Stray Cat.
He drinks Seltzer.
Stray Cat.
He drinks
Did
Seltzer.
I say Seltzer?
Chris.
I drink Seltzer. Stray Cat Strut, that guy.
Stray Cat Strut.
Yeah.
Great song.
Yeah. Anyway, it's a tribute album, and I listen to this thing all the time now. It's amazing.
Well, I will tell you, even if you're not a fan of remaking this movie. Stephen Sondheim wrote the lyrics. I mean, Jerome Robbins did the choreography. Bernstein, wrote the music. I mean, even if you don't want them to remake it, the music is phenomenal. Even if you don't like the movie, you can't not like the songs.
I agree. It's very
wonderful.
Powerful.
Yeah, they're wonderful. So they got that going for them. I don't know. There's something, the choreography in this, I think they went for, because if you look at the original West Side Story, it's much more balletic than this. This was much more natural kind of dancing. But I actually prefer the balletic approach. The dancers in the original were like, I mean, they were solid.
But you're saying that, Bate. Your love of the fur. You can't. It's
no, I am. But I'm just telling you. When I look at in fact, I watched a video side by side, the numbers, and it was really interesting to watch them side by side. And look at my background.
Wait, you're doing YouTube research for this show?
Well, because you told me that you don't. When we're supposed to watch two movies, you don't. You just go on somebody's show.
That's what
who
I do.
watches the two movies,
sometimes,
and you just repeat what they say. So I said I'm going to do the same thing because it works for him, and he's running the show.
Right.
Well, John, he doesn't have time to watch the movie. What is he going to watch it on the train?
No time.
That's
he's
crazy.
walking 4 miles. He's running every other day, but he's got no time.
Why my ass is so flat?
But when I looked at the numbers side by side, I really preferred the more theatrical version. But I think part of that's my background too.
Wait, but that scene, America in this film, the dancing that goes on that Anita does in America.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
No, but I mean, if you look at the original number, Rita Moreno is.
I'm not saying Rita Moreno.
No, I mean the scale of it is different, and part of the scale of the change in the scale is because it's 60 years later and we're remaking it. But what I like about that, it isn't a different scale and better or worse because it's 60 years later and we're using bullet time or CGI or something. It just expanded the scale of it. These people are literally like when they shut down traffic and they dance in the intersection and there's a ring of people around them, like the ring of people watching people do the grasp in the last movie. I just thought it was just really exuberant, and I think that's a really important part of the emotional experience of the movie, both for all of them together being exuberant. And that's why to me, like I said, I could take or leave Ansel Elgort, but to me, Rachel Zegler as Maria is so fragile and so young. It made me believe it more because you wouldn't look at her and expect her to be, like Ralph said, like so aggressive. Like I see that's what I want. And it's in an innocent way, but it's also in I'm becoming a grown-up way. And it feels very real. And she feels like their love feels endangered, of course, but she feels really endangered and by everybody. And I think her performance is just more powerful emotionally to me than Natalie Wood. And that's no knock on Natalie Wood's performance because some of the choreography, like you said, like the way they did I Feel Pretty is very different.
Right.
And again, it's not just that it's bigger. It's just in some ways it's more, which should be bad.
And you're not wrong. The order, the changing the order, putting that right in this one, putting that right after the Rumble scene took the power of that Rumble scene away from me. And as I watched this time, not in the theater, but this time, I was like, that is a strange place to drop that giant scene. Because that scene is so powerful when those two guys get stabbed that I think it took it took
and
it
that's
away.
why Wise changed the order in the 61 version. Because he didn't think it was the right place for it. Because he wanted the power of that last scene.
I think he was right.
Yeah.
Now, how did you feel about I'm asking you, John, specifically, the female jet that always wanted to jump in? I think that was played by a transgender.
Yeah,
human.
it was. And they, the big line, and they had to make a big deal out of, I'm not a woman or whatever I'm not a girl, whatever. I mean, like I said, the politics, listen, the whole thing, even with the not doing the subtitles, if you just put out the movie and not say anything about the subtitles, no one would have batted an eye.
I agree with that.
Okay, but they got to come out. Spielberg comes out beforehand and says, we're not going to put subtitles because it will undermine the Puerto Rican people.
I think you're right. I think that cut in. I think that didn't help him. And I also think just him even acknowledging that we're not going to do blackface. We all know that. We know that this is a different time, 60 years ago, and life was different back then. Don't even bring it up. Who cares?
I agree. I mean, let the film stand on its merit,
right?
And cast whoever you want. If you want a completely, you want the ethnic cast, that's what you want. Just do it. Don't announce it beforehand and say, no, we don't want anybody that's not Puerto Rican trying out for the. Just do it. And I think people, because this movie did not do well at the box office. This was not a hit in the box office.
Well, this is also
during COVID, but I get it.
I mean,
but it did not do the numbers that they thought.
No, I know that, and I think that has a lot to do with the lead actor too. I think he's the weakest. But
that came out a little bit later on.
No, I'm saying just
as a performance. I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think he's the most exciting thing to build the weakest link
in
the
and he was in the original. Tony was the weak link.
That's true.
In the original,
yeah, but I had a much different feeling about Tony in the original. I love Tony in the original.
Oh, Richard Deemer.
I like that guy. Riff, of course, was he was the standout. But this one, he was the wrong. I think in hindsight, he was the wrong guy to put there. Not because of the Me Too. I just don't think. I think the height difference was a huge thing. I think that ultimately it came out that his
pretty thankless role, other than the death scene.
It's tough.
I mean,
I totally disagree with you guys about the Krupke scene. I loved the Officer Krupke scene. I loved all the choreography that was going on. The only thing I didn't like is that woman who stuck herself in the jail. I was waiting for some kind of punchline to come out of her doing that thing. That's the only thing. But I kind of enjoyed that.
No, because the other thing, Ralph, like if you remember the original, some of the other jets, the guys in the background, stood out. Like Ice.
Oh, 100%.
A couple of guys. And in this movie, they were all
disposable. The cool scene you're talking about in the garage.
Yeah.
That tall guy that says, hey.
That's Ice, the guy who played Ice.
Okay, Ice. Yes, you're right. There were other people outside of the main guys who popped through. They did not. They all look, to me, they all look the same.
Yeah.
Except the one kid, the kid with the nail in the ear.
That was Baby John.
But that's the only one
who had a nail stuck in his ear.
And the girl who wanted to be in the crew. In both films, she was a big, she stood out.
Right.
That character stood out in both films. So I didn't love this one. It's kind of ballsy for Spielberg to remake an original.
That's true.
Like that. And I wonder what he would do if someone tries to remake Jaws, how he would,
I think it's really interesting to think of somebody like Spielberg, who has basically been the American movie industry for so long, and that he found something that you can honestly say, hey, that's pretty ballsy to do that.
So. I
mean, he can do whatever he wants at this point,
right?
And has been able to for a long time. And he took this movie that, so I read some articles about it, and he's like, I love it. I grew up singing it and loving it, and it was just part of my life. And when it was time to do a musical, I said, I want to do that. And you can feel that he loves it. He respects it. It's the kind of remake that if you're going to do a remake, I like where it's coming from, because it is coming from affection. It's not coming from, we got to have the shark look much cooler or something like that.
No, so you're right. He loved the film.
I think that's important, because but he doesn't love the film. To me, he doesn't love the film in a way that's like, either it can't be changed, like the Gus Van Sant Psycho remake, or it's so whole, like that Superman Returns.
Yeah,
it was basically like Superman and Superman 2 are perfect divine movies, and this movie that I'm making is a sequel that worships them, and that is just boring.
Right.
And this movie is much more lively while respecting the original and being its own thing at the same time, which, if you're going to make any kind of remake, I mean, isn't that the goal? You want people to feel that it comes from the place that the first one came from and did its own thing. And I mean, I didn't love the Spielberg version, but I thought it was very good, and it was very good for those reasons. It was satisfying.
And like John said, Rita Moreno was used very well.
Oh yeah, that could have been
to have that kind of to have her in the film and not be a disaster is a huge plus.
Well, and be an active participant, not.
But you're right. The reason to talk about why they did it, they wanted to do that. It's like, okay, just do it, and just let's not talk about it.
Right.
And I think that might have caused some of the people not wanting to go see.
I'm sure there was some blowback because of that. And Drew, I think you're right. I think because of Spielberg's cred, he's going to be given more latitude in taking on something like this than most directors would be. right?
Yeah.
So if you're going to remake a classic, all right, Spielberg would probably be the guy to do it, right? I think a lot of people thought that. So, and I give him credit because you definitely, even in this movie, you see the Spielberg touch. You do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for a guy that is like the biggest studio guy ever, who at one point even had his own studio, he certainly has done some really interesting, different stuff. Right. He made a Adventures of Tintin movie, for Christ's sake, and that was really good. So, Spielberg, this is not anything remarkable to say, but I mean, I'll give him a chance. I'll follow him anywhere. I'll see what he does, and I think it was worth following.
And like you said, it came from love. He loved this film, and he loved the music, and you have to let him do it.
And The Fabelmans is made of love as well. It's just a much more personal, smaller scale, but it feels like the same man made both movies, and I mean that in a
1941 was made with a lot of love.
Yeah, well, not all of his movies.
I love that film.
Munich is trash in many ways, but that doesn't mean it's not well made. So.
Oh my God, Munich is great.
Well, Munich is only great if you don't know anything about how and what actually happened.
Well, you know me, I don't know anything, Drew. So yeah, I love.
Well, you can only watch what's on the screen, Ralph. You can only see it.
Come on, you know me.
One eye on the screen, one eye on the road.
All right, so is it Yippee-Ki-Yay, John? What is the Yippee-Ki-Yay? Yippee-Ki-Yay?
You know what? I will say, I can't give it a Yippee-Ki-Yay or Yippee-Ki-Nay. I'm just telling you.
What about a Zooby-Doo?
What do you mean? You have to give it one or the other, or nay. I put it in the middle.
If you love the original, and you love the original like I do, I think you'll think this is okay. I mean, you can't argue with.
But is it worth seeing? Do you think?
I think it was. I think it was worth seeing for me to compare it to the original, and
totally
I was not completely disappointed.
Let me ask you this:
I would be.
If the other one didn't exist,
yeah.
So somebody not our age, somebody that's born.
If you never saw the original and you don't have an affinity for the original, and this was the only one, and it was a version of West Side Story, I would say, okay. It's a fine film. It is.
Isn't it like comparing plays? Like if you see a play of whatever, and
no, it's not.
Okay.
It's not like comparing a play. I mean, plays are different. I agree with that, but we're not talking about a play. We're talking about a classic film.
But if you hadn't, so you're saying if you hadn't seen the first one,
if I had never saw that film and I just saw this, knowing what I know about West Side Story, I would say, yeah, you know what? I really enjoyed that. Okay. But I can't just pretend like the other film didn't
I understand
exist,
you can't.
or how I feel about that film.
If there ever is a Jaws remake and I'm still alive, I'm going to have some things to say, I'm sure.
Like The Sting,
nobody's talking about making The Sting again.
No, but I'm saying that-that's a film I would never want to see remade, even though you could probably remake it and have some good cast in it because the script is so brilliant. But that film is like, there are perfect films out there.
You understand that nobody younger than 40 years old is going to watch any of those old films at all?
It doesn't matter to me. I don't care.
Yeah.
Why? You don't need to.
Now the Exorcist series is coming out.
I heard.
So this is going to be fascinating too.
Yeah. So.
Same guy did the Halloween 3, and I'm not sure that worked out, but
I'll say it again. They did that Gina Davis Exorcist TV series on Fox.
That?
The first season, I couldn't believe how good it was.
Yeah,
it just was good. It was a good riff on it, and it was called The Exorcist. There were 2 seasons. The second season, I watched half of the first episode, and I was like, "All right, we're done here." But the first season was really good, and if you love the movie, it's done really well. So, I mean, everything these days is a legacy sequel or a reboot or a reversioning or whatever. This was in a way just a straight remake, and it was good. It was a good movie. It was well done. So I would give it a Yippee-Ki-Yay.
Yeah, I'm giving it a Yippee-Ki-Yay as well.
I didn't get a chance to watch the Bollywood version, which is called Josh, and it's not apparently available.
Wait, is this for real? Is this for real?
Yeah, it's 3.5 hours. It's called Josh. It stars Shah Rukh Khan and Aishwarya Rai Bachchan.
SRK?
And it's supposed to be, this big epic movie, but it's only available on like some streaming service I'd never heard of. So I didn't get a chance to watch a 3.5 hour Indian movie for the different podcast, but another time.
Chris, what's your rating?
I'm going to give it a Yippee-Ki-Yay because, honestly, unlike John, I don't have a super huge affinity for the old one. I've seen it. But like I said, I did like the way that this kind of opened it up a bit more. And I mean, like I said before, I think Rise was purposely trying to simulate the stage experience.
Yes.
I think that's what he was shooting for. But yeah, no, I mean, I enjoyed it. I was pleasantly
Good.
surprised at how much I enjoyed it.
But that opening scene in the original, when they shot in New York, that was a big deal when that film came out. That they actually shot it in New York, because I think
I mean, did you like the idea that this one started with it comes up to Lincoln Center, right? That they're getting rid of the slums.
I mean, I think the shot in the original is much more iconic, but I get what he was doing in this one.
Yeah.
I mean, he was showing a dilapidated city that was turning into something else. That was a statement he's making, which is true for that time period. I understand why he did it.
I think we all know, if you want an authentic New York movie, that we've talked about, Phone Booth is far more iconic.
There we go. Shot in Canada. That one.
Amazing. So.
Shot in LA. Yeah. All right. Let's go to the wheel for the next film. All right. So here's our new wheel.
There's a lot of movies on there.
There's still a lot of, we did 3 each. Are you guys?
There's actually twice as many movies on there than there are. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah. All right. So here, let's spin this sucker and see what happens. Dracula. Now, who brought this? John, did you bring this? Okay. So this is the second one for you?
Yeah.
Now, which Dracula are you?
Well, I'll throw it out to the group. We can either do the Frank Langella or the Francis Ford Coppola. But I want to compare it to the original Dracula, the 1930s.
The Todd Browning?
Todd Browning, yeah. So I'll let you guys, which one you guys want to do?
Well, I've actually never seen the Frank Langella one, so I'm happy to watch that.
Yeah, let's do that one.
But the Francis Ford Coppola one has more nudity, so
this one, the Frank Langella one is more romantic, and it's got Laurence Olivier.
I think let's watch that one. That'll be a good one.
All right.
Frank Langella.
What year did that one come out? The Frank Langella.
Oh, I will tell you 1 second.
Like 78 or something?
Yeah. Was it in the
70s? 70s, I think so.
I feel like it was the 70s.
It's based on the Broadway play, actually.
What happened when I walked out? I didn't suck my stomach in. Is that what happened?
79.
Yeah.
Okay.
Olivier.
I'm very relaxed.
Donald Pleasance, Kate Nelligan, and Frank Langella played Dracula on Broadway too.
Yes, that's a good. That's actually, I remember that one. That's a good one.
Yeah.
So we'll have to talk about that. All right.
Oh, Dracula. Oh, that's 2 in a row. All right.
Cool. All right. So let's do a little. What'd you watch? Let's start with Drew. What'd you watch this week?
What did I watch this week? Well, I watched something that was already on my list, but Ralph, you recommended it very highly last week. So Kelly and I went and watched Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, which was wonderful. And I didn't realize it until after. It was the same writer-director that did Edge of 17 with Haley Steinfeld and Woody Harrelson. And I love that movie. Another wonderful coming-of-age movie. Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. I read the book when I was 10 or whatever, so I didn't really remember anything about the story other than it's about a girl who's in middle school who's trying to figure out who she is, figure out her period, and figure out religion. And there's a whole section of the movie that is when you find out why they have she has a Jewish father and she has a relationship with Kathy Bates, who's her Jewish grandmother, and doesn't have a relationship with Rachel McAdams' parents, who are not Jewish. And that part kind of messed me up, actually. It was very personally meaningful to see that, and to see how religion has affected people's families and things like that. And the way, everybody in the movie is good. The girl is really good.
Yeah.
Benny Safdie, who knew he could act, is really good. The one of the directors of Uncut Gems is her dad, and he's really good. But Rachel McAdams, I've always really been a huge fan of hers, and she was just amazing in the movie. She really was just the right kind of performance of I have a kid who's growing up and I don't know what to do all the time, but I want to do right by them. And I thought it was really great. So Ralph, you were absolutely right. That was a beautiful movie. It made me cry. It was really good. And the other thing that I saw that I did not know existed, I watched the trailer for a movie called The Wrath of Becky. I don't know if you guys remember the movie Becky, where a young girl kills Nazis, like Kevin James plays a Nazi against type. And it's a really entertaining, nasty action movie. Well, they made another one.
I saw that trailer.
They made another one. And I think Stifler from American Pie, Sean William Scott, is a Nazi who steals her dog, who's one of her dogs that survives the experience in the first movie. And it's a movie. You don't mess with people's dogs, and it's Nazis, so they got to die. So I was super excited about that. So I watched Are You There, God It's Me, Margaret, a beautiful, well-made adaptation of a classic family story, a coming of age story. And then I watched The Wrath of Becky, and then I finished it off with Jewish matchmaking. So it was a very broad range of experiences this week, and I would recommend all of them. So
good. All right, John.
So I watched a film on our other show about Indian movies. Somebody reached out to me because they know I'm into science fiction and recommended a film for me. And it's a Korean film called Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes. And it's an hour and 10 minutes. And it is.
So it is beyond the 2 minutes then.
It's a really interesting movie. Ralph, you'll appreciate it. It was shot in a single take, not pretend single take. And it was shot with an iPhone. I saw the making of it. And it's about a guy who comes home. He owns a cafe. He goes upstairs. He's got an apartment above the cafe, and he sees images from the future, but he can only see images 2 minutes into the future. So that's what the episode. That's what it's about. It's funny. It's some of this stuff doesn't make any logical sense at all, but it's a really clever movie, and the way they shot it. I don't know how they were able to do it in one take with the choreography of because a lot of characters come in and they're constantly going upstairs. Like at one point, the future shows up on a computer monitor in his room, so he's got to take the monitor downstairs to the cafe, which has got the world's longest cord. So he's going down 2 flights of stairs with this corded monitor. But it's funny. The cast is very likable. It was subtitled, obviously, because it's a Korean film. But I'm really glad I saw it. It reminded me of like an episode of The Twilight Zone, except an hour and 10 minutes. So if you're into science fiction, you like time travel, it's an interesting take on time travel. Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes, available on Prime Video.
Oh, nice. Oh.
That sounds great. Did you ever see the movie Russian Ark?
No.
It's a movie that's also a one take film. It's about 20 years old, and the whole they shot it at the Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg. It's the Winter Palace. So it's like this it's a movie. It's got a story, but it's a ghost and a nobleman, and they kind of are walking through Russian history with all sorts of different characters coming in and out, and all the costumes on it, and it's all one take for real.
But it was really done in one take, not just pretend one take.
Yeah,
really?
Which is, it's so exciting to watch that and to see it work. So I definitely want to check that out. Plus, my goodness, a foreign language film with subtitles that's little more than an hour. What a refreshing change of pace.
I was like, wow, this was easy.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. That would take one bus ride, I think.
Yeah, right?
Chris, what do you got?
So I being that it was May 4th recently, and being the fact that I am a dyed-in-the-wool Star Wars fan, I watched and enjoyed 3 of the new Star Wars Visions animated shorts.
Oh.
The first season, I think, was primarily Japanese and Asian, maybe Korean animators. Maybe not all of them, but most of them. Some of those were very good. It was pretty uneven. But of the 3 that I watched, and obviously they're not connected, so you can watch them in any order. They were pretty good, all 3 of them. And one of them was very light, very cute. It was done by Aardman Animation, the guys that do Wallace and Gromit. So it's claymation, and that was
claymation.
Yeah, that was really fun. There's some funny bits in that. Like I said, very light, but very fun as well, set in the Star Wars universe. But that was a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to watching the rest of them. Much like you said, John, in the past, that the Star Wars animated stuff really does shine in a way that feels kind of both traditional, but yet also very fresh and very new. And I went way, way back also and watched some of the original Star Wars Droids Saturday morning cartoons.
Oh, wow.
I watched live as a kid. And that series, it's funny, and I feel like I'm just going to throw it out here. That series is pretty much hated by a lot of people. I know a lot of people were disappointed in it. And I think it suffers because, looking back on it, is that every 3 or 4 episodes, they changed all the characters. Like, they would have like 3 or 4 episodes, and then they changed it. In fact, Lucas went back and before they put those that shows on Disney Plus, he actually went back and re-edited some of them into like.
Of course, he did.
Yeah, because he can't help himself. But he actually took like what would be like 4 episodes of a cartoon and edited it into like an hour and 15 minutes or whatever, into like a little mini feature or a little feature. And but anyway, so I've been watching a lot of following up on a lot of Star Wars type stuff.
Nice.
John and Chris, have you guys ever seen George Lucas in Love? That short film.
That is a good one.
I've heard of it, but I may have seen it, but I can't remember it.
You guys,
it's very funny.
Go on YouTube and check it out. Okay.
Will do.
Are you mocking Nerd Boys?
Yeah, a little bit.
Nerd.
No, it's actually quite funny.
The guy's wearing a Wally World shirt. He's going to mock Nerd Boys.
Okay.
He's got other nerdy stuff.
Here's what I watched this week, and I watched the greatest, what do you call it? A reality TV show ever produced, called Jury Duty.
Oh,
do you guys know the premise of Jury Duty?
No.
Okay. So some guy thinks he's been hired to be in a documentary about jury duty. Okay. And he's in California. They're going to do a trial. What he doesn't know is the trial is fake, and everybody in the jury is all actors doing improv. And James Marsden's in it as an actor who has to try to get himself out of jury duty.
The real James, he's playing James.
James Marsden is in this thing as James Marsden in jury duty, trying to get out of it. It is the most clever, brilliant premise I've ever seen. It's 8 shows. It's on Amazon Prime. It's some Freeverse thing. I don't know what this channel is because there's commercials in this thing.
Yeah, it's Freevee, which used to be the IMDb channel.
It's Freevee.
So.
But have all the episodes dropped?
Yes, 8 of them are done.
So you've seen them all?
I've seen them all. And they're only about 30 minutes. It's not a long watch for each one. I'm telling you, it's the greatest show ever produced. I don't know how they picked this kid that was the one that the non-actor in the film, but
I presume by a lottery.
It's amazing. Amazing.
So Ralph, you found 4 hours to watch that.
I watched it all in one night. I watched it from like 11 till 2 in the morning.
Find the time?
He was on the bus the whole time.
Nope. I'm telling you, check it out. Jury Duty.
This
and now I don't know how here's the thing. If they don't have a bunch in the can like other episodes or other seasons, I don't know how they can do it again, because this is a premise that once you know the premise, it's done.
Right.
So hopefully they got 3 or 4 in the can, because it's an amazing watch. And I'm a guy who loves. I've done Jury Duty.
Yeah, so
I could sit in a courtroom and watch this stuff all day long. Yeah. So you're getting the insides and outsides. You get all these people who are improving. It's just amazing. And then the last episode, they kind of show you the behind the scenes, which is, for me, that's what I was geeking out about, is how did they pull this thing off? And it's just amazing. So check that one out.
Did they shoot it all in one take on an iPhone?
They did not. But they had a lot of cameras. Now, this guy went in knowing that there were 3 cameras around him, right?
Yeah,
they set him up. That's right. Now, it happened during COVID. You see a lot of people in masks, so this was done in probably late 21. So he knew he was in a show, a documentary, but he didn't really know what was going on. And God, it's so good. And James Marsden, I went and bought his movie Sex Tape, or Sex Drive, that he did, which is
how about Sonic?
Because this isn't giving it away. So he's sitting in the jury room ready to go, and James Marsden sits next to him, and he looks at James Marsden and goes, "Hey, I think, weren't you in Sonic?" And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "God, that movie sucked." And it was just this honest, and by the end of it, he signed. It's just, you gotta check.
How
this
was
thing
the
out.
reveal?
It's fantastic. Yeah, it's a tear-jerking show. You can't get over what happens. Yeah, it's great. I can't recommend it highly enough.
It sounds like a little bit like of a revamp or same idea. During the massive amount of the explosion of reality TV, there was one show that wasn't very good called the Joe Schmo.
Oh
Show.
yeah,
I've heard it compared to that.
Yeah.
Because that was one where the idea was that there's one guy, everybody on there was an actor except for this one guy, and he kept thinking he was about to get eliminated and he never did. They were in some mansion, and I just remember the very last episode because he had become good friends with this one guy. And at the very last episode, like when they're breaking it to him, and he's just looking at this one guy, he can take everybody else lying to him. And the guy was just like, he was basically like, look, man, everything I told you about me is true. I have a wife. I have a kid. Her name is Jane, whatever. But I am an actor. And the guy was just like, what is going on? It was worth it for like that 30
I'm telling
seconds.
you, and the stuff, the improv that these people are pulling off, and James Marsden, I just love the guy now. I can't get over what he did in this show.
Enchanted. He was great in Enchanted.
Yeah, I know, and that's brought up a lot in this.
Yeah.
But the guy that they found to be this juror, I'm telling you,
he's going places.
I can't even. You got to see
right.
it. That's it.
Check it out.
I want to talk about it when you
voir
guys
dire.
see it because it's amazing. So, all right, there you go.
Cool.
So next week it's Dracula
Dracula
with Frank Langella.
Frank Langella, 79.
Very sexy Dracula, if I remember. He's very
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
like not Twilight sexy, but kind of sexy.
No. Middle-aged
They
sexy.
I remember that was kind of the thing. They upped it's definitely not Max Schreck and Nosferatu.
No, I think women were like
No, it's
taking their
very
shirts
sexy.
off for him. If I remember, they were like,
Yeah,
they were like,
very
yeah.
sexy vampire.
Right.
Yeah, Max Schreck is very sexy in what is that Willem Dafoe movie where he
Yeah.
plays?
Shadow of the Vampire.
I love that movie. Yeah,
That's a great flick. Yeah.
It's a great movie.
All right, so that's what we do next week is Dracula.
The crazy thing about that Willem Dafoe movie is they really just put pointy ears on him. He looks that weird in real life.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's true.
strange dude.
You know, the
All
bald-
right, guys. So John, any subscription? That's too late. Doesn't matter, right?
Who's watching now? Like this?
Well, keep it up.
Maybe
We're on
we can get
Instagram
maybe
now.
we can get up to 85.
We're
people
doing
watching.
Instagram shorts, so maybe
Right,
maybe
Instagram.
The
who
last
knows?
one
This
hit
thing
like
could really take off.
105. Anything is possible.
We
Kids.
105 in 2 days. That was a short time. The last one that we hit.
Yeah, that's
105.
right. And it never went above that.
Yeah.
We're getting
Once
there.
it hit 105, we
Keep it up.
peaked.
Keep it up.
Yeah,
All right,
I,
That's right.
everybody.
We do this show for us anyway.
yeah.
It's
I was
all-
about to-
Oh,
Totally
I'm sorry. I forgot one thing. I want to congratulate Robert De Niro, age 79. His seventh
Holy
child was born. So congratulations,
Gotta
Bob.
be kidding me.
No.
Nope.
That always reminds me, whenever I hear that, it just reminds me of when Harry Met Sally, when she's like, it's different for men. Charlie Chaplin had babies when he was 76. Yeah, but he was too old to pick them up.
I just saw
That's
a
great.
picture of Meg Ryan.
Oh, don't do that. Don't do it. Okay. Give
Stay
her a
away
break.
from plastic
Give her a
surgery,
break.
please.
Yeah,
Give her a
yeah,
break.
I know.
I loved her.
Yeah.
Loved her.
Yeah. She's
So
she
cute.
was America's sweetheart for a while.
She was.
All right,
Now
everybody
James
have a good
Marsden
week.
is
James Marsden is America's
America's
sweetheart.
sweetheart.
Good looking
Sex
man.
Drive. Check out the movie Sex Drive.
No,
have you
check
guys
out
seen Sex
Enchanted.
Drive?
Enchanted.
No,
Yeah,
It's
it's
a
funny.
riot. It's a riot.
Indonesia.
All right, guys. Have a good
everybody.
week. See you next week.
Bye.